Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it's
Welcome to the post-show wrap-up of the Shrimp Tank. I'm Brad Berger, along with my co-host J.B. Wilson. And our guest today is Mike Pickles with Cornerstone Financial Strategies. We just had an intriguing and fun conversation with Mike. To listen to the entire podcast, visit seattle.shrimptankpodcast.com or subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. We're always interested in your feedback, so please don't forget to rate us. So, Mike, we started off with an interesting question around the concept of Six Sigma and processes. Could you talk a little bit to our audience about the importance of processes in a business?
Absolutely. What I commented on during our time together was the fact that if you think about an individual person and an individual day, from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed, essentially everything that you do involves some sort of process or another. And that plays out, as you can imagine, in your workplace. And every workplace has thousands and thousands of processes that they go through. And the concept of Six Sigma, which, as I talk about in our time together, really was bore out through Motorola, is where it kind of came from, but is a concept around trying to drive your processes to as close to perfection as you can possibly get. From a business perspective, the bottom line end result for an individual or a shareholder with excellent, perfected processes is better bottom line and a better client experience. And so that's what Six Sigma is all about. But what I also share is that as important as that is for a firm and for a company and for any business, I also believe in the saying, which is, give me a firm where judgment can reign over process. And why that's important is that you can't just get locked into the same old rote routine and the processes that you have within your firm. If you don't have some form of judgment in making decisions, then you are ultimately not going to have a good end result for your clients. And so, judgment over process.
You know, Mike, one of the themes that we discussed throughout the podcast was that of culture. And how important is culture to the business itself?
Culture to me is paramount for any business. Is creating a culture that permeates throughout the organization. I think if you think about the most successful companies that you can even come to mind, I think you'll find that the culture that they've created permeates their organization. Just off the top of my head, I'll throw one out. Think about Southwest Airlines, right? They have a culture that is all about improving the airline experience, right? Every one of their employees lives that culture. What other airline do you get on where the stewardess or steward sings into the microphone, right? I mean, that's an example of culture in the everyday experience of the end individual. So, to me, in any firm, small, medium, large, if you have your culture nailed, then the end client experience is going to be that much better, and your employees' experience is going to be that much better.
So, Mike, you've got a fascinating story, and I'm hopeful that many of our viewers right now will take the time to tune into the podcast to hear that entire story. Great examples in there, but one of them is obviously having worked for an entrepreneur and then worked for corporate America and then moved into entrepreneurship. So, if you were to just kind of line out your top few bullet points as it relates to somebody who's thinking about or who has recently made the jump, I'll call it, from what you call the W-2 world to entrepreneurship, what would that be?
Well, there's a lot of things that you could touch on there, but I think a few things jump out at me. One is you have to be willing, ready, and able to take that leap without a safety net. And understanding that when you're moving from the W-2 space, the employee world, to being your own business owner, there is no guaranteed tomorrow. There is nobody that is going to continue to give you your paycheck that next day if for some reason the clients don't show up. That is the first and foremost thing you have to be prepared to deal with. Next is flexibility. Understanding that when you make that leap, you've got to be willing, ready, and able to adjust on the fly to what's necessary to get the job done. And I think that leads to the last point I would make about that is that you as an entrepreneur, you really have to be what I consider a lifelong learner, because you are going to be tasked with situations that come up where you don't know the answer. You haven't experienced it before. You have to be willing to dig in to learn something new to be able to, again, create that great end experience for your clients, for your customers, etc. So be willing to take that leap of faith. Understand there is no safety net. Be flexible in how you approach your day-to-day. And ultimately understand that being an entrepreneur really does require you to have a desire to be a lifelong learner, because you never know what tomorrow is going to bring.
Well, Mike, we want to thank you for joining us today. So for our listeners and viewers, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, first and foremost, always encourage individuals to visit our website at liveyouриdeallife.com. Tons of great information out there about who we are and why we do what we do. In addition, we always encourage individuals who are interested in talking with us further is to call us, set up what we call a fit meeting, where we sit down. There's no cost involved to determine whether or not what we do can add value to your individual situation. So give us a shout, 253-756-2003, and visit our website, liveyouриdeallife.com.
Well, once again, this is just a taste of what you can expect by listening to the entire podcast. Visit seattle.shrimptankpodcast.com or subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. We'd love to hear from you, and please do not forget to rate us.
Join us back in the tank for our next show on May 16th, when our guest will be Kevin Mills with Play Czar LLC.